All right, everyone, today we are in a Ford Mustang. I wanted to show you guys something a bit more historic. This is a 2014 Ford Mustang GT, and this is a very special car. Well, for one, because it's a manual, and I thought it'd be important to experience a manual because I really miss driving a manual, but also because this is from the 2013-2014 Mustangs that introduced the infamous Coyote 5.0. And the Coyote 5.0 is a really important part of Ford's history because it's from their kind of Renaissance era where they came out with this engine, they came out with the Ford Focus RS, and a whole bunch of other really successful vehicles. To me, the Coyote is the kind of the famous cheat code engine because, oh, I can feel that live axle, especially with those slicks. This engine's very important, and it's called kind of the cheat code engine by a lot of people because originally what you'd do if you wanted to get a V8, make power, and whatever chassis you wanted to do, you'd kind of go with an LS or this, that, and the other. And those are cheap to kind of swap in and kind of Lego build your way to success. Whereas the Coyote, while it's not necessarily a cheap swap, but if you grab a car that already has it in the platform, that's quite strong because these are super easy to make power, famously, whether it's NA, boosted, supercharged, procharged, twin turbo, what have you. The power delivery is really nice. And these came with 420 horsepower and a very nice kind of power delivery, how I should say. A lot of good low-end torque, but as an everyday car, you know, if you wanted to just leave it NA and keep it reliable, because these engines are fairly straightforward to take care of as far as I'm aware. They're pretty bulletproof.
Also, heads up, this is completely stock except for a cold air.
Really?
Yes.
So it's completely stock except for a cold air.
Yeah, completely stock except for a cold air and an axle back, my bad.
And it's just on good tires.
Yes, it's on a really good tire.
I'm a little surprised by how soft the brakes feel.
That is my fault.
Okay.
The rears need to be bullet.
Okay. Stock clutch is easy to drive though.
Very, and they can handle about 600 wheel.
We're not having to really rev it to the sky too much to get it to move.
Well, it revs to 7,000 stock. That's where it actually is comfortable with.
And it revving to 7,000 in an American V8 is kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's still a cross-plane crank engine as well.
Yeah.
So
having that red line is neat, but it still sounds like an American V8 because of that cross-plane.
Exactly.
What's the rear gear ratio on this?
355.
355. We're not going to 0 to 60 in one gear. This ain't a GT500. This was the body style of car that got me into Mustangs originally. The GT500, the Coyote engine. I just always thought how interesting it was that American cars were going from back in the day being the car to have because it was cool, and then kind of in the 90s the tuner cars came along and they were cheap and also ideal to modify. You know, LS motors started coming around, these cars started coming around, and the whole implications of that is that they kind of had this resurgence where now American, you know, car makers make not just muscle cars but very serious sports cars. I don't think they've quite gotten out of the stigma yet that they can make good sports cars or not, but with the C8, these Mustangs, it's making it a lot easier to believe in them and a lot harder to doubt them. And this is the, I know a lot of people have had a lot of things to say about the MT82 transmission that's in these. I know a lot of people like T56s, they like TR6060s, and for good reason. We don't plan on breaking it today, because I've heard a lot of reports of people saying, you know, if you try and power shift these transmissions, you might lose third gear or break synchros, or basically just do what my WRX did and basically shred itself to pieces because it did not like being a transmission anymore. But in this, you know, as long as you give it a chance to shift, it doesn't really feel like it's in danger. And it likes being shifted. It feels like a driver's car because you've got a really nice seating position, even with the massive, you know, customary muscle car hood. You still have good visibility. You can see out the back. Mirrors are fine. Tire pressure mount. So as we talk more and more about this car, one of the other interesting things about it is that This has very soft brakes that need to be bled. You are not kidding.
Yes.
Is that this car is on some very meaty tires. I don't know who makes the wheels.
So the wheels are Forge Star F14s.
Okay.
And then the tires are a Mickey Thompson ET Drag.
Okay.
They are a 28-10-5 15 tire, so it's on a 15-inch wheel. And the tread patch is a 305 millimeter.
Neat. And so you can really feel it. So you were explaining that the combination of the live axle and these tires kind of leads to that kind of feeling of the sway.
Yeah, you have a little bit of sway.
To an untrained person that doesn't know the difference, that would almost feel like a weird sort of body roll.
Yeah, it feels almost like a body roll, or that the rear end is just floating around, really. Until you actually get to that point where the sidewall is stretched enough where it feels like a legitimate hardwall tire.
Sure. I think Mickey Thompson has proven themselves. They don't need my validation, but
No.
Obviously they're a very good tire. They make very good tires. Did I just go from second to fifth again?
Yes.
Man, that's such a short throw. So the other interesting thing about that, because Ford offered a short throw kit for these cars, didn't it?
No, but what you can do is that they make short throw shifters for this car that reduces it by about 35%. So you're talking about
A really tiny throw.
yeah, the short throw, probably about 3 inches at most.
Rev matching in this car is actually quite easy. It's very notchy, which is very important. Ford does a good job. I don't think it's really fair to them to really kind of underestimate them, because not long after this you have the S550, right? And even then, to a lot of people, it's just another Mustang. They didn't realize the implications of going from live axle to IRS. Not that I really want to dog on the live axle. You just have to not drive it like it has an IRS. But the benefit of having the live axle is that straight line speed, that's what this car is made to do. And with these tires especially, even better suited for it. Whereas the S550, like Tanner and I were talking about before, is that they were more about circuit records and things like that, as evidenced by the GT500 being able to keep up with the new Ford GT. Just a neat transition period in Ford's history, being able to experience all of this. And then being able to go from this into the 10-speed, which we'll focus on at some point, which feels like a totally different car, except for the engine, because the power is delivered really differently. I really hope I do this right.
Honestly, I've been in some other stock cars that I feel have performed better.
Interesting.
Than this.
Any guesses as to what the main factor was?
Intake air temps.
Okay.
You're talking about a larger inlet, so it's a 110 millimeter inlet for this cold air, but it's actually a closed air box.
Oh my God, I just stalled it. That's embarrassing. That's a really fast starter.
Yes. Yes.
Even the S550 doesn't start that quickly. You still got that signature Ford look that they haven't shied away from, which, interestingly, not a lot of companies have really managed to do very well. There aren't many car manufacturers out there that stick to a very similar kind of body style archetype. That's third gear. That feels much better. The MT82 is growing on me. I think it's one of those things that the internet kind of just tells you to shy away from.
It very much so is.
Well, that's so nice.
They can handle about 550 horsepower and be fine. As long as the main issue is people actually forcing them into gear. That's the main issue, because like I was telling you about previously, with the issues with stock clutch and stock throw, or stock shifter, I should say, they have a lockout sometimes when you're in WOD. So people will force them into gear and chip a tooth, or they'll cause issues of the gears grinding, whatnot. So that's the main issue with these, is mainly the drivers, because I have abused this car to no end and have no issue.
Yeah, it feels fine.
Yeah.
It drives nice. I guess reliability if you want to drive it unintelligently, I guess.
Yes.
But I'm not feeling any problems with it. Reeling out the gears in this is nice. And it's not, with the 355, it's not unusable. And it's daily drivable, you know.
I do daily this car.
Yeah?
This is my daily.
Did the seats go back on this too?
Yes. You can actually expand the trunk space by folding down the rear seats.
Oh, I love the pedal position. Not to harp on you, but those brakes scare the shit out of me a little bit.
What you do is you just baby them in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel like I'm in the semi going down a hill and I'm melting my brakes.
Oh yeah.
That's what it reminds me.
These are actually brand new brakes, which is why.
Oh, I see.
So that's part of the issue.
I mean, they work. It's
Yes.
just you're waiting for that bite, and you're like, I need to stop.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly because I'm in your vehicle and not mine. Otherwise, I would be very comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
like how you probably are, because you expect it. I very much like this though. The shifter though, I actually like the design of. I don't know if I'm going to get criticisms for how I like to shift, because I like to shift like this and not like this. Mainly because I got criticized by my my CDL trainer for grabbing it like this for reasons I'm not going to say on YouTube, because he compared it to how you might grab something else. So now I grab it like this because it makes me very self-conscious. One of the criticisms I always heard about older Mustangs previous to the S550 was that the interior didn't age well. But this doesn't rattle. I mean, sure, there's a good amount of plastic in here, but it doesn't rattle. You've got, this is the GT Premium, so we've got the shaker system, you know, so you can really bump your tunes. It's got a CD player, which is a neat sight these days. Previous to the 13 and 14, did it also have this steering wheel? Because this, I feel like I've seen this steering wheel in every Mustang I've ever seen.
So they had very similar steering wheels, all the way from like 3 valves.
Oh wow!
So you're talking 2005.
Yeah.
And that these were redesigned for the 2010 body style, which was this body, but actually had a 3 valve in it.
Right, because they kept the 4.6 up until
2011.
2011.
Yeah. 2011 was when the first Coyote car came out.
Oh, okay. So it was actually 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014.
Correct.
Those model years that had the Coyote.
Yes. And then this specific body with this hood and a couple other little different things, like the tail lights, the bumpers.
The sequential taillights.
Yeah, stuff like that. All of that was modern into 2013, 2014.
Right.
So that was only 2 years for this specific car.
Oh, it's like having an access port in a, just straight away in the car.
Air fuel, oil temperature, and you also have independent gauges that tell you whether it's appropriate or not.
What would brake performance be? Is it like stop distance or?
It tells you how your brake life is, how hot they are, stuff like that.
Oh.
You have your braking and G gauge.
That's a G gauge, I was gonna say.
Yeah. So like you can tell like your right, left, anything like that.
I love that. That's a really good summary of how Ford builds their sports cars. They come with a G gauge.
Yeah.
I love that.
And just automatic start it. You can do a countdown. You can do whatever you want. And if you actually do a countdown, this is a cool thing. It has like a little tree.
It gives you a tree.
Yeah. So this is one of those things that
nice.
in this car is pretty interesting, because you're talking about
track use only.
Yeah. If you're moving, it will not turn on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you have to be stopped to do it.
Oh, wow.
So,
well, the interesting thing about that, I'll let you hold this for a second.
And this is also only in the premiums and only in the track.
Like the tech package or whatever?
Yes.
So
Here,
okay, so my immediate thought when it says track use only on that, where do they expect people to use that? At a track that doesn't already have a tree?
Yeah.
Trunk space, I imagine, we'll be able to look at that, because we can take this back to...
you can fit a body in there.
I don't know if we can say that. I don't know. We'll keep it in there. I don't know if we can... Hypothetically, in case, you know, any law enforcement agents are watching, that is totally... And so, in your opinion, because I'm not going to test your traction control or with it off in another person's vehicle, but in your opinion, would you consider it a fairly invasive or a fairly modern kind of traction control?
It's not invasive.
So it's not going to cause an accident like how a lot of old school traction control might.
It can in certain aspects. That's actually kind of where that meme comes from. I drive a Mustang, you know, like driving into crowds and whatnot.
Sure.
That became really popular with like 3 valves in this body style, and they have very similar types of traction control.
I remember that. That all started during a Mustang week in like 2015.
Yes. Yep.
I remember that. It's a pretty simple car to drive.
Yeah, it's very simplistic. It's comfortable. It's very much so reminiscent of a old school muscle car with modern amenities.
And I feel like it would also be a great road trip car. I don't know how these cars kind of handle with heat and things like that.
Amazing.
But because I know with a lot of boosted cars you want good cooling, but you know, NA, I imagine it would do pretty well.
You get 20, for me, like if I just have it on cruise control doing like 65, I get like 24, 26 miles an hour.
Which is fantastic.
In a manual car.
Which is fantastic.
As well.
So, okay. Well, I guess, honestly, not a bad grand touring option because you got the space for the luggage. Very comfortable seats. You said that these can come in leather. Is that just an option or is that part of like a trim package?
So normally they are cloth seats. You can option in leather seats, and it also comes with trim packages. So if you get a trim package, there are things like leather seats, heated seats, stuff like that, that's standardized.
So you can have, you said cotton and leather. What is this that's in between then? Because this ain't leather, obviously.
It's just a cloth.
It's cloth with just kind of a pleather
padding.
with a pleather covering sort of thing.
Yeah, so like this is just cloth right here.
Oh, now I feel the cloth.
Yeah, and then everything is just leather.
And it's bolstered, and then on top of it. Okay, I see. Was this ever a different material in any different cars, or was it kind of the same material even in like the Shelby's?
So the the 3 valves and whatnot are more plasticky. They're not. They don't have that give to them.
This is kind of
a rubber.
I guess that's what. Yeah, because it does feel a little bit like a rubber thing, almost. This is a horrible simile or analogy, but it kind of reminds me of the sort of thing that they'd use as a ground material in like a children's play park, but with a lot less give.
Yeah,
but kind of that material. So I guess that's kind of why you have no rattles in here.
So if you actually look at like a 66 Mustang and whatnot, 65 Mustang, this style dash is almost the exact same. So it has like this come over and cross and down.
This very symmetrical look to it.
Yes. So it was, and on top of that, the actual feel of it is very similar.
I really do like this symmetrical look of the interior of the Mustang, because it almost looks like, you know, you could go into Photoshop, invert this, put it over there, invert that and put it over there, because it's all so satisfyingly similar.
Yes.
Obviously in real life, it's much more complicated than that. When I was overseas, you know, my teacher had a 13 car that was made to look like a very, you know, I'm not going to say the name of the movie the car is from because people have gotten sued for even mentioning the car. It had, what was his name? Nicolas Cage in it. We know what movie we're talking about. He made his car look like that car, like a modern version of it. And he was so sad he couldn't bring it with him because it wasn't even right-hand drive. Because the country we were in, if your car wasn't right-hand drive, you couldn't do it, even though we love Mustangs.